Nirodhah, one of the most important words in this journey of yoga. Remember, again, we're talking about foundation principles so that we know what to do and why we're doing the Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 rungs. First, foundation principles, and then we're talking about the 8 rungs, and then what do we do? What are the subtler practices that we do with those 8 rungs? This word Nirodha is one of the most important words that there is. It doesn't translate easily. When I think about and talk about the word Nirodha, I often remember people in the medical field, doctors and nurses and pharmacists. These people have a language of their own. When they talk pharmacology, they talk these words. The doctor scribbles something on a pad that's a prescription for something. The pharmacist, the chemist, can read it, and they know what it is, and they say, oh, well, it's a so. And they speak that language. We don't speak that language, so they know the meanings of all of those words, and it's kind of impressive, I think. But if we're going to go into any area or field of human endeavor, we need to learn some of the words of the language of that field. We do not have to become Sanskrit scholars. We just do not. It's not a requirement. But we need to know some of the key words. They're extremely useful, and Nirodha is one of them. And we have no single English word, nor do I know of any single word in any other language that is a direct one-for-one translation of this word Nirodha. So we have to keep moving around with a lot of different words, and gradually over time we get increasingly a feel for what this word means. In the 1800s, when the Europeans were first translating some of these texts into the European languages, one fellow was teaching them first into German and then brought them into English and a few other of the European languages. The word Nirodha was first translated as suppression. Well, possibly the word suppression worked in some extent in the middle 1800s. But now, in the years that we are in now, this word suppression for Nirodha doesn't work very well. Why? Because of the coming of modern psychology. And everybody knows this now. Don't we all know this? That if you're in a relationship, you're in a marriage, you're in a family system, you're in a work environment with other human beings, and you sometimes have emotional crap going on in your life, what do you do with it? What is the principle that you do not do with emotional stuff like that? We all know it, don't we? Do not suppress your emotions. What happens if you suppress your emotion? It causes tremendous problems in relationships and with yourself, dealing with yourself. So don't do suppression or repression. But, 150 or more years ago, language was different. Language keeps evolving and shifting and changing, so we have to keep exploring words. So, back to Nirodha. What does Nirodha mean? It does not mean merely suppression. It does not mean control your mind in the way that we commonly hear of one person in a marriage trying to control their spouse. We hear of this, don't we? That's familiar. Don't try to control other people. So if you say, well, you're going to control your mind, it sounds like a negative sort of thing. But it gives you a slight idea of what Nirodha is about. Here's another phrase that we're all kind of familiar with. Let go. To let go. Something's bothering you, what do you do with it? Let go of it. Your friend says to you, you're disturbed by something, well, let go of it. Or we'll say, well, forgive that other person and just move on. These are ways of talking about Nirodha. It's not suppression, but it's also not allowing stuff to come into the mind field and invade me and be troublesome. It's not controlling, but it is regulating. It's managing. We also have, for example, the word channeling. We're channeling the flow of energy operating in the mind. We're regulating our mind. We're coordinating the inner different aspects of our mind. The parts of the mind that is our sensory motor mind in yogic language is called manas. The indriyas, the cognitive senses, we're coordinating them. So we're coordinating the various aspects of our mental process. We're coordinating our buddhi, which in common English is sometimes called let your conscience be your guide. It's the principle that there is an intelligence inside of us, all of us, that kind of knows right from wrong. We know what we should do. We know what's not useful. We have a sense of what is useful. And how do we get our mind and our cognitive senses and our motor skills to coordinate well with our own intelligence? How do we coordinate all of those? And all of those give a feel for Nirodha. I don't think that it's possible to sit here and say a few words to you in a few minutes that gives you a completely full understanding of this word Nirodha. But I want to invite you, ponder the word, note it down, make it start to make it part of your vocabulary, and recognize that in fact the very definition of yoga in terms of Yoga Sutras, which is the greater text, if you will, in which Ashtanga Yoga resides, the actual sutra, the verse in which this Nirodha word appears is Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which means yoga, the definition of yoga, the entire process of yoga has to do with Nirodha. The whole process has to do with Nirodha. And in simple language, what just pops now into my mind is setting aside. That's a phrase for Nirodha. Setting aside everything in those few minutes of meditation and deep meditation, setting aside everything that I am not. Nirodha. Play with the word, live with it, get to know it. Okay?